Is going on, Rain Gang? Your boy Sutton Def here is back with another episode on the channel, and this is actually the second episode of the Reigning Fist podcast. That's right, this is a new show that we're starting here on PRP where we will be covering combat sports. That's right, combat sports. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So for all of my people out who love watching UFC, who love watching MMA in general, who love watching, boxing, all that good stuff. We will be discussing combat sports here on this channel. Now, a couple of things to address today. And before we do, please be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel as well if you are new here, subscribe if you are an MMA fan, because there's a lot more content where this came from. By the way, we already post MMA content on this channel as is. Okay, we already do as is. A lot in the shorts feed, right? In the shorts feed, you can find a lot of our MMA content if you check over there. But we're going to be doing more live streams here, more live stream format streams. So make sure you stay on the lookout for that. I want to go through a couple things here on this episode. So one, I want to talk about the White House card, the UFC White House card, and my predictions for that card. Also want to talk about my thoughts on MVP / Netflix MMA and the future of it. And then I also want to get into Conor McGregor. He's returning to the octagon to take on Max Holloway in International Fight Week here in just a couple of months. So tons of exciting things going on inside of the MMA world. And we're here to talk about it, man. We're here to talk about it. So let's go ahead and dive into it. First and foremost, I'll say this. A lot of you guys who are just tuning into this channel for the first time because you're looking for MMA content, this channel primarily focuses on NFL, National Football League, specifically my Baltimore Ravens. I love the Baltimore Ravens, but I also have a love for combat sports, and I have for the greater part of the last almost 2 decades, about 2 decades. So yeah, I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts. I'm a big fan of combat sports, and I'm here to talk about it. I've got a lot of knowledge on it. And yeah, that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do. So sound off in the comments whether you agree with my takes, whether you disagree with my takes. Let me know. But again, be sure to always like the video. We are doing these live here. Shout out to everybody who's watching live. We got King Blaze in the chat. What's going on, King Blaze? What up, my brother? We also have Darlene in the chat. Says, hey, what's good, good people? What's going on, Darlene? Thank you so much for coming through. Good evening to you. And we got my guy Stretch 52 says, Reigning Fists. Let's go. Let's get it, brother. Okay. So first thing I want to dive into here on this episode of Reigning Fist Podcast, RFP, if you will, I want to dive into this UFC Freedom 250 card, right? I think that this is going to be a very, very interesting card for the UFC. Obviously, if you're not aware, the UFC is coming to Washington, D.C., specifically the literal White House, and they've actually already started putting things together for this White House card on the White House lawn. I saw a picture earlier today of them kind of starting to put things together. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it was on Bleacher Report. Let me show you guys this. Take a look at this. This is on Bleacher Report. You guys can see them kind of setting up where they will be staging these fights at. It's going to be right on, I think it's the south lawn of the White House. And that's going to be so interesting, mainly because, let me just show the full article here in the full picture. Mainly because, like, just the views of it, just the views, like just seeing UFC, like MMA fighting going down in front of arguably one of the most important buildings in the world. That's going to be surreal. So, especially as a fight fan, somebody who's been watching for, like I said, like years now. Again, like almost like around 2 decades, somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact year that I started watching, but I've never seen the UFC pull off anything like this. And, regardless of how you feel about the current administration, the presidential administration, I'm certainly not the fondest of it at all. But this is going to be, I think, just without a doubt, a very, very cool event. Now, let's get into some of the fights. Let's get into some of the fights here. So I'm going to start from the bottom here. You have, kicking off the card, you have Diego Lopez versus Steve Garcia. Now, Diego Lopez is a guy who, he gets a lot of opportunities in the UFC. We'll say that. He gets a ton of opportunities in the UFC and never really delivers when those opportunities are handed to him. He most recently lost to Alexander Volkanovski, actually lost to him twice. And now the UFC still, I mean, for some reason they love the guy. They love the guy. Steve Garcia, lesser known talent here. He was number 9 ranked at featherweight, which is 145 pounds. I think this is a good fight to open the card just based off of the name value of Diego Lopez, but it's really just an appetizer to the appetizer. Because if you go to the next fight here, and to be honest with you, I think Diego Lopez wins this fight. Diego Lopez can win any fight that's not a title fight. That's where he's at. So I got Diego Lopez taking home the victory over Steve Garcia in that one. But like I said, it's the appetizer to the appetizer because next you have Bo Nickel versus Kyle Dawkins, which let me be honest with you. I get it. UFC White House card. You want to have Americans on the card. And hell, if no other Americans win, one of these guys got to win. Right? That's how you're looking at this fight here, this middleweight bout, which, if you're not aware, middleweight takes place at 185 pounds. Bo Nickel is known for his wrestling. He's an Olympic level wrestler. He's one of the best in the sport to wrestle. He just doesn't really have the tools to put it together because, again, the UFC is mixed martial arts. It's MMA for a reason. It's mixed martial arts. You can't just come to the UFC with one of the martial arts under your belt that you've mastered, seemingly, and expect to have long-standing success, right? Now that an argument can be made, hey, well, sudden look at the Dagestanis of the world, the Habib Nurmagomedovs and Islam Makhachevs and stuff like that. But the thing that they don't talk about with a lot of those fighters is that they're actually pretty good on the feet as well, right? And the reason why they're so good on the feet is because they make you worry about the takedown threat at all times. Bo Nickel will literally try to stand up with you, even though his claim to fame is wrestling. He'll try to stand with you like a dumbass, right? Just like a dumbass. And he's going to be going up against Kyle Dawkins here, who, listen, man, journeyman. You just, again, appetizer to the appetizer. This is the fight. These first 2 fights on this card are, because here's my thing. The UFC, like I said before, it feels surreal that they're going to be on the White House lawn. And Dana White actually promised UFC fans and just fight fans in general that this UFC Freedom 250 card was going to be the biggest UFC card of all time. But that's impossible if you just take a look at these first 2 fights on this card. The first 2 fights on this card, I'm not going to say they're ass, but relative to the expectations that we had of this being the best card ever, yeah, these 2 fights are ass. These first 2 fights are ass. But I do think Bo Nickel wins. I do think he uses his wrestling. I think he just secures a win on the White House lawn. Trump praises him, all that dumb shit. I think that's what happens there. We move on. Then you have Mauricio Hoofy versus Michael Chandler. Okay, so now we're starting to heat up a little bit. So this is like the appetizer to the appetizer's appetizer, right? You've got basically what is looking like it's probably going to be a slaughtering in this fight. You have a up and coming young killer in Mauricio Hoofy, who is just running through guys right now. He's taking on another journeyman, Michael Chandler, who, his UFC career really has not been about him seeing a whole bunch of success. It just really hasn't. Like he's I think won maybe 2 fights in the UFC. Michael Chandler, let me take a look at his record really quick. His fight history. Yeah, how many wins does he have in the UFC? Because he's on a 3-fight loss streak here. This will load. I guess not, because why would it, right? Here, I'll look up his sure dog. That always does me right. Michael Chandler. All the goats use sure dog. All the if you know, you know. Okay. So he's on a 3-loss streak, Before that, he beat Tony Ferguson with that front kick, which basically saved his UFC career. Right, he had a one-shot knockout on Tony Ferguson with a front kick right up the middle, hit Tony Ferguson square on the chin, and put him out cold. That was a cold knockout, I'm not gonna lie. But outside of that, he just cannot compete with the top guys in this division. Dustin Poirier lost to him. Charles Oliveira lost to him. He even lost to Paddy Pimblett. He got TKO'd by Paddy Pimblett. Before that, Justin Gaethje lost to him. Also lost to Charles Oliveira again. So he's fought Charles Oliveira twice. Lost to him twice. Right. So, he's going up against Mauricio Hufi, and we take a look at his resume here. 13 wins, 2 losses, part of the Fighting Nerds, right? A little faction that they have in the UFC with a couple of these Brazilian fighters. Most recently beat Rafael Fiziev by TKO. Before that, lost to BSD Benoit Saint Denis by submission, by face crank submission. I got to go back and watch that fight. Before that, was on a tear though. Was on a tear, right? So this Mauricio Hufi kid, I mean, he's 29, so he's not necessarily like a kid, but in MMA, 29 is like literally like your prime. Like you're just entering your prime, right? At 28, at 29. So I think he's gonna go out there and I think he's gonna starch Michael Chandler. Because Michael Chandler, he has nothing to fight for anymore. I mean, of course, money, but if it's not a Conor McGregor fight, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter when it comes to Michael Chandler. Like I think he's just gonna go out there, kind of fall on the sword for the UFC so they can promote this guy, Mauricio Hufi. That's what I think is gonna happen. All right, but let's move on here in this White House card. So the first 3 fights, I mean, again, man, if I had to like rate these fights like a 1 through 10, Diego Lopez versus Steve Garcia, give that about a 6. Bo Nickel versus Kyle Dawkins, I'll give that a 4. That could be an absolute snooze fest. Mauricio Hufi versus Michael Chandler, strictly because of how uncompetitive I think this fight will end up being, I'm gonna give that a 5, right? At least we know Michael Chandler will make it entertaining in some way, but I'll give it a 5. Moving on here, you have Josh Hokett taking on Derek Lewis, which is the newest addition to this card. After Josh Hokett went toe to toe, blow for blow, literally with Curtis Blades a couple of weeks ago. Donald Trump said, "Hey, look, why do we not have Derek Lewis on this card?" And then they asked Josh Hokett to get on the card. I think that it actually happened with like Donald Trump saw that fight with Josh Hokett, and then he told Dana White, "Hey, look, I want Josh Hokett to fight. Why is he not fighting like Derek Lewis?" I think he mentioned Josh Hokett's name too. Trump did. Um, but yeah, this fight, I think I honestly, if I got to rate this fight 1 through 10 in terms of like how excited I am for it, I'm gonna give this one a solid 8, man. Now we're starting to cook. Now we're starting to cook. You get a heavyweight bout between a long-standing knockout artist, the most knockouts in UFC history. Derek Lewis holds that record. Um, Obviously has not looked that great in his most recent fights. Derek Lewis is not. Let's actually take a look at his recent fights as well here. Let's take a look at Derek Lewis because as of late here, Mr. Lewis has definitely been struggling. Okay, definitely been struggling. So Derek Lewis, as you guys can see, 29 wins, 13 losses in his UFC career. Goes by the Black Beast. He is 41 years of age. And his last couple of fights go as follows. So he most recently lost to Waldo Cortez Acosta in a weird stoppage where he kind of just got touched by a jab and, nothing that should have been super consequential to knock him down, but he got knocked down from it for some reason. And he just let Cortez Acosta just punch him out. He let him get him out of there. So that was weird. I don't know really what was going on because Cortez Acosta, while I recognize he has some pretty good power, it's not power to put Derek Lewis down off of like just a jab that really just kissed Derek Lewis, right? Really just kissed him. And he went down off of it. Before that, had a win over Taliesin Teixeira that I did think was an early stoppage, but a good win nonetheless. Before that, beating Rodrigo Nascimento. I don't even remember that one. I have to go back and check. Before that, losing to Jelton Almeida. So he's been up and down, up and down, up and down. Right. I mean, that's just kind of like the story of Derek Lewis. And they're feeding him to this young kid, Josh Hokett, who's 28 years old. So again, Derek Lewis, 41, Josh Hokett, 28, literally in the prime peak athletic shape of his life. This was a guy who was a former D1 wrestler, I believe, and then also he was in the NFL, had a little stint in the NFL. So this guy's an athlete. Okay, he's an NBA, a natural born athlete, and you saw that in his fight against Curtis Blades because he was toe to toe with Curtis Blades the entire time. And in times where Curtis Blades looked tired and worn out, and his face was bloody and beat up, even as the veteran, he looked like the fish out of water. Not Josh Hokett. Josh Hokett is just an athlete, right? And if Josh Hokett, I think in this fight, if he can stay away from, if he can not be dumb and like just sit in front of Derek Lewis and just take his punches to the chin, because he's not going to be able to do that. He will get knocked out cold if he just tries to blow for blow and take Derek Lewis's punches to the chin. He'll get knocked out. I think Josh Hokett should like threaten the wrestling more in this fight against Derek Lewis. Like, take him down early in the fight, take some of the steam off of his punches, right? Take some of the wind out of Derek Lewis's sails early, maybe in that first round. Then in second round, all right, now let's go forward with the hands. I'm going to dominate you on the ground in the first round. And then the second round, let's go at it with the hands. I think that should be Josh Hokett's game plan. Either way, I do have Josh Hokett winning this fight and remaining undefeated because right now he's 9-0. He's 9-0. And he's probably the most exciting prospect right now in the heavyweight division. And I'll tell you like this. I put it this way. If Josh Hokett defeats Derek Lewis at the White House, he's only one fight away, one more fight away from a title shot. Okay, he's only one more fight away from a title shot. That's what we're looking at here. Because right now you have Derek Lewis, who's the number 9 ranked, but Josh Hokett, who's the number 5th ranked because he beat Curtis Blades. So he took his spot. If he beats Derek Lewis, I mean, there's not too many other guys that you're going to throw Josh Hokett at before you give him a title shot. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But either way, I think that's going to be probably the first fight of the night where there's like a dramatic finish to it, if you know what I mean. I think that's going to be a good one. I can't wait for that one. Moving on here. Okay, then you have Sean O'Malley taking on Ayman Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi. Let's actually take a look at Mr. Zahabi's recent fights here. Let's take a look. All right, here we go. Here we go. Ayman Zahabi. Because admittedly, I hadn't really heard much about this guy until he got on this UFC card. He's from Canada. He's 14-2. Looks a lot like Ariel Helwani if he was a fighter. The dude's 38. And in his last, I mean, he's been on a tear recently. I mean, he's on a what? How many win streak? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A 7-fight win streak this guy is on right now. And these are over some notable opponents. I mean, the last 3. Marlon Chito Vera, Jose Aldo, legend, and then Pedro Munoz as well. Nothing to scoff at there. So I see Ricky Tercios in there too. So I mean, this guy, he's been around. He's been winning fights. Now going up against a Sean O'Malley, who honestly, guys, I think Sean O'Malley is just. I think he's overrated. I think Sean O'Malley is overrated. I thought when he first came onto the scene, I thought he was going to end up being a lot better, but it's the power of Sean O'Malley. Once he couldn't put down Chito Vera in that rematch that he had against him, like no matter, he threw the kitchen sink at Chito, right? Couldn't get him out of there, you know? I just don't think he's got enough power to really be considered a legitimate, like long-standing threat in this division. He's a cool name. He's a big name, huge name, former champ, right? But this fight for me is a pick 'em. If I had to pick, like, again, scale 1 to 10, how excited I am for this fight. Again, I'm gonna have to go with like a 4. I have to go to 4, a strong 4 to a light 5 on that one. Okay, strong 4 to a light 5. So far, I mean, my favorite fight is Josh Hoke versus Derek Lewis, and this is before we jump into the co-main and the main event. And I think that that's an issue, right? Like, there's no reason why Josh Hoke's name should be carrying this card for me. You know what I mean? Again, if I'm talking about which fights I'm most excited to watch, I do want to see Hoofy versus Chandler. Don't get me wrong. I do want to see Bo Nickel versus Dawkins. I want to see Diego. I want to see all the fights, right? Because I'm a fight fan. I watch these things. But Hokit versus Derek Lewis, that one by far, and again, it's the most recent addition to this card. That one by far stands out. It jumps out the most to me. Okay, so co-main event. So you have Alex Pereira taking on Cyril Gane for the heavyweight interim title. Okay, so this one here, scale of 1 to 10, how excited am I for it? I have to say a 10, only because Alex Pereira is on the precipice of making history here and being a 3-division champ. Right? If he can pull that off, that would be, listen, that would be amazing. That would be incredible for the sport, I think. It would be. But I'm concerned. I have my concerns, chat. I do. I made a video about this last week. I saw a video of Alex Pereira sparring heavyweight Robelis de Spain. And, you know, I just don't know. And again, you can take this with a grain of salt because it's sparring, right? And in sparring, you're never really getting the full context. You're not getting the full story. Okay, did they just start working out? Was it at the end of the workout? Was there an agreement between the two guys? Hey, just let me work on this a little bit. That's what you just never know. But from the looks of what we're seeing here, you know, Alex Pereira, he is there to get hit, and that's something that you typically see with Alex. He can get hit. It's not like he's the most elusive guy. He's just got freaking stones in his gloves, right? And he can put guys to sleep. But at heavyweight, I'm not exactly sure if that power will transfer over enough, to him beating enough for him to be able to beat a Cyril Gane on the feet. Because here's the thing: Cyril Gane does two things. He avoids big power shots. We saw that against Francis Ngannou. Yeah, we saw that against Francis. He avoided the big power shots and survived all those rounds, albeit losing that fight. But he's also a point fighter. He's a huge point fighter. And he bounces around with the striking and things like that. He touches you up with the jab and follows up with the right hand. Will throw some leg kicks and things like that. I think he could easily outpoint Alex for 5 rounds. Problem is, Cyril Gane doesn't have crazy power either. He doesn't have devastating power. So I could see a world where early in the fight, you have Cyril Gane just kind of styling on Alex Pereira in a sense and just touching him up with jabs, low kicks here, threatening the high, that sort of thing. But Alex Pereira will realize that, hey, he's touching me, but like, this doesn't hurt, right? Like, I'm not getting hurt by his strikes. So then you're going to see maybe him in the later rounds. I'd say rounds 2 and on, you're going to see a frustrated Alex Pereira really try to hunt down Cyril Gane, try to hunt down his chin. I think that that's how this fight's going to go. Is he a normal heavyweight or this is his first time moving up? This is his first time moving up, Stretch. His first time moving up, Alex Pereira. So yeah, he's trying to like get into his heavyweight body and defeat Cyril Gane so he can become a 3-division world champ, which again would be amazing for the sport of UFC. But I think I'm gonna pick, for my money, I'm gonna pick Cyril Gane to win this fight. And that's gonna be a hot take when I actually end up dropping that video here on this channel. I promise you, there's gonna be a lot of people in the comments saying, "Oh, Sutton, you're crazy. Oh, you're a casual. You don't watch the sport for real. Alex Pereira is about to put this boy to sleep." I don't think so. Because like I said again, if Cyril Gane could survive the power of Francis Ngannou, a natural heavyweight, then I'm pretty sure he can survive the power of Alex Pereira. Now, if Alex can manage to, get enough low kicks off and compromise the movement of Cyril Gane and do that early to make him a sitting duck to where he can just kind of like pile up these left hands on his chin, then yeah, I could see a world where Alex Pereira wins. But I think that Cyril Gane is going to be too busy, too active, and just giving Alex Pereira too many things to think about for him to be able to really kind of like step in, get inside, and hurt Cyril Gane. So I'm going to go with Cyril Gane in this one. I mean, as boring as it might sound, I would say Cyril Gane either by, I'd say Cyril Gane by decision, man. Which is tough to say. Yeah, are heavyweights really going to go 5 rounds? It's possible, bro. With these two and their fighting styles, it's possible. But I'm going to go Cyril Gane. In terms of how excited I am for that fight, again, 10. Again, 10. And we get to the main event here. Ilia Topuria is taking on Justin Gaethje for the lightweight title. Okay, the undisputed lightweight championship of the world. And again, how excited am I for this fight? I'm going to go with an 8 only because I feel like I know exactly how it's going to go. Ilia Topuria is about to, well, no, the UFC, let me back up. The UFC is about to lead a lamb to slaughter. And that lamb's name is Justin Gaethje. Justin, the journeyman Gaethje, who, while he is a journeyman, he's a very successful and accomplished journeyman, but a journeyman nonetheless. And he has put together a good string of fights back to back here to put him in the conversation again for a title shot. So here he is on the White House lawn, the last American to fight on the night, and he's going up against Ilia Topuria from the country Georgia. And Ilia Topuria is about as undefeated as they come. Knockout artist, has knocked out guys that you don't really see get knocked out all that often, or really at all. But he's got that touch of death power. He's got that one hitter quitter. Ilia Topuria does. And Justin Gaethje is another fighter who is always there to get hit. He will take a punch in order to give one. Problem is, you don't want to take punches from Ilia Topuria. You just don't. Because you will go to sleep. And I think that's exactly what happens here. Ilia Topuria puts him out, puts his lights out in under a round. Right? In under a round. And Ilia Topuria probably gets on the mic after the UFC White House event is all over, after he knocks out Justin Gaethje, and he probably says something like, "Hey, give me Conor McGregor if he wins his next fight." He'll probably do something like that. Or he might say, "Give me Islam." I don't think he'll do the right thing and say, "Hey, look, I want Arman Sarukian next." Because that's who I want Ilia to fight. I want him to fight Arman Sarukian. That's what I want. But yeah, overall, the UFC White House card is a really good, if you just talk about pay-per-view UFC cards, this is a good one, a really good one. And mainly because you have the star power that you see on your screen right here. Ilia Topuria, Justin Gaethje, Pereira, Cyril Gane. Specifically, Alex Pereira and Ilia Topuria, two huge names in the sport right now. Two of the biggest names in the sport right now. Two of the best fighters in the sport right now. They're on the card, which is why this card is automatically super exciting. So I'm excited for it. I know a lot of you fight fans out there are excited for it. And we might have to do a fight companion episode for that. So that's when we do a live stream during the fights and kind of react to it in real time. That should be fun. Ashley's in the chat, says, "Hey Sutton in chat. What's going on, Ashley? Appreciate you for coming through. Good evening again. I think you were in the PRP stream. Yeah, you were earlier today. Shout out to you for supporting the channel as always. Let's move on here. Let's move on. I want to talk about Netflix and the MVP card. So a couple of weeks ago, you had Netflix put on a fight card that was promoted by Most Valuable Promotions, aka MVP, that is led by Jake Paul. And that fight card featured Ronda Rousey, who some of you guys may be familiar with the name. She took on and beat Gina Carano. Now, for the main event to be Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano automatically tells you that Netflix doesn't really have a whole lot of fights they can put on that are going to be super high level, right? Because Ronda Rousey hadn't fought since like the mid 2010s, and Gina Carano hadn't fought since about 2009 or something like that. But Ronda Rousey is a very big name. A lot of women really, they recognize Ronda Rousey as the girl who was kicking ass in the middle of the 2010s and snapping girls' arms off and looking all mean and stuff like that. So they tuned in, and apparently it got like 17 million views. Global peak views was 17 million when the Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano fight came on. And the reason why I'm talking about the views, the viewership of that fight card was because I am of the school of thought that Netflix can absolutely afford to take this thing further. A lot of media pundits in the MMA space think that, oh, Netflix, they're not going to be able to keep doing fights on their, on their platform because they don't have any fighters and things like that. This is going to go, it's going to go under. This is the last one, it's the first and last. They're hating on it. They're hating on it. And it's mostly like UFC fanboys who like have some sort of like weird affinity to Dana White in the UFC. It's like weird. They don't want any other fight promotion to get any sort of, attention that it even rivals even slightly the UFC, which is weird to me because as a person who just simply loves MMA, the more competition, the more leagues there are for fighting, the better it is for the fighters and for the product that you get, right? Um so that Netflix card, well, I just said all that. I do think that the Netflix card it did underdeliver, it underperformed, right? It underperformed, and I was kind of disappointed at how uncompetitive some of the fights seemed. Again, Ronda Rousey beating Gina Carano in 17 seconds. I felt like that fight was fixed because no way that was Gina Carano's plan to just go out there and accept getting taken down in 10 seconds and then getting armbar submitted in the next 7 seconds. Like it felt fixed. And then some of the other fights that I was kind of hyped for, Nate Diaz and Mike Perry, that ended up being pretty decent, but it got stopped in typical Nate Diaz fashion. He started bleeding too much. Nate Diaz he's an older fighter from Stockton, California, who's got he's been fighting so long. He's got a bunch of scar tissue built up in his face, to the point where like even if he gets touched, you can punch him one time, he'll start bleeding. He bleeds super easy. So they stopped that fight once he started bleeding pretty badly. And that kind of felt like it was an anticlimactic in a way. The Francis Ngannou fight. Francis Ngannou was the former UFC heavyweight champion until the UFC did away with him, and he did away with them, and now he's fighting for Netflix. He beat Felipe Lins, who is a much lesser known guy, kind of like just a can that they fed Francis Ngannou to whoop up on, and that's exactly what happened. There were really no surprises from that card. There were a couple of names on there like Saladin Pernasi. He won his fight against Kenneth the Boss Cross, and that was a good fight up until the finish. So Pernasi is maybe a guy that the Netflix, MVP, they can promote him going into the next fights. Robelis Despain, who we just saw sparring with Alex Pereira. Robelis Despain, he fought Junior Dos Santos, who is a UFC legend, and he completely destroyed Junior Dos Santos, who was way too old to be fighting in the first place. So there's a couple of guys, like again, Robelis Despain, Saladin Pernasi, some of the guys you can actually take and market on fights in the future, right? I could see that happening. And the reason why, again, I see a lot of people hating on it, like, oh, Netflix, they'll never be able to build this, they'll never be able to grow this into something better. Here's my thing. Why not? Do you understand? Do you understand how much money and capital Netflix has? Netflix has over 300 million subscribers. Over 300 million people pay their Netflix bill every month, and that goes to Netflix, and they're only raising the prices. My point is, they have the money to throw at stuff like this. They just almost bought. They almost bought what was it? Paramount or Warner Brothers? One of the two. I think they were acquiring Warner Brothers. I want to say, and they were like ponying up multiple billions of dollars. So yes, they have the money to throw at UFC events. Excuse me. They have the money to throw at UFC events. So I don't understand where people get off saying, "Oh yeah, They're not going to be able to keep this going for long. They're going to be like any other promotion where after a couple of fight cards, they're just going to go under because they don't have the money to support anymore. No, they have money to burn. Netflix does. And if they want to start to market some of these stars or some of these guys who won on that last fight card who are lesser known, they can do that. They can even take it a step further. Netflix they have the luxury of already being in the content creation space and knowing what it takes to garner attention. So think about it like this. Is anybody here familiar with the show Love Island? Some of you guys might be familiar with it. I'm familiar with it. I've never watched it before, but I know how it had the streets going crazy. You could literally take a reality TV concept show like that and apply it towards fighters where they're in some sort of, I don't know, fight island, if you will, or Love Island. And there's all sorts of drama going on between them that's manufactured because, reality TV is manufactured. And you build up the interest for these lesser known fighters. And then by the end of the season, they fight on a Netflix card on a Saturday night for the whole world to see. That way you get women involved. You get women on board with watching it. Because there's a lot of women who love reality TV. Some don't, but a lot do. You get them on board with a Netflix show about these ruthless and savage fighters, and then you throw some women in there too. Forget about it. Forget about it. And you market it all the way up until a Saturday night fight night on Netflix, live on Netflix. Then everybody's going to be tuning in to watch the people that they saw on this card, that they saw throughout the whole season of the reality show, wherever. They could do it. The UFC did something similar with the Ultimate Fighter. And they kind of let that go by the wayside. You can tell they never really were able to nail down how to produce it in a way that garnered a lot of attention from casual fans. But Netflix, they have the luxury of having the people in the building who know how to get that attention. And they have the money to do it as well. So I just think that the Netflix MMA stuff is here to stay. I'd love to see it, stay here for years and years to come. I'm tired of only being able to watch the UFC. That's the only option. It'd be like if McDonald's were the only fast food restaurant available in the world. Eventually, you'd get like tired of it, and McDonald's would eventually start to slack off on you. It's like, hey, you got no other options. You can't go anywhere else. I don't need to be better. I don't need to get better. That's where the UFC has been at for the past couple of years, which is why I love the prospect of Netflix and MVP MMA coming over or coming through and in a way, not taking over, but telling the UFC to step aside. Scooch over real quick. We could both sit on this bench. Here that is MMA. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Now to round out the show here, I do want to talk about one last thing. One last thing, and that is none other than the notorious CONOR McGregor. Yes, another name that a lot of you might be familiar with. CONOR McGregor is a UFC fighter that fights at lightweight. He was a former champion, probably the most famous UFC fighter of all time. It was recently announced that he is coming back. He's coming back after this dude hasn't fought in like, what, 4 years now? In about 4 or 5 years. And he's coming back to fight one of my favorite fighters, Max Holloway, who actually just lost his most recent fight to Charles Oliveira. And I could not be more excited about this fight. Number one, just as a UFC fan. Again, I've been watching UFC for a long time now, and there was no time like when Conor McGregor was at the peak of his reign, which was around like from the years of like 2014 to about 2016. Right, those 3 years he was really at the top of his game, the absolute top of his game. And it was a time to be alive as a fight fan because he brought you the excitement on fight night, the excitement before fight nights, the excitement after fight nights. Like, he was just the guy. He was the guy. There's a reason why my co-host on the main PRP pod, Alex, that's his favorite fighter, Conor McGregor. You know, but he's coming back to fight Max Holloway, and what I think about that fight, I mean, Max Holloway is stylistically a very, very tough matchup for Conor McGregor, who's coming back again off of like what, a 4 or 5 year layoff here. And in his last fight, he broke his leg, and we never saw him again in the octagon. But now he's coming back against a guy who fights once or twice a year. He's super active. Max Holloway is a guy who is one of the best boxers in the UFC. Thank God they didn't give Conor a wrestler. I get that, but they gave him a boxer and one of the best ones to ever do it. And by the way, Conor McGregor and Max Holloway, they have fought before. They fought before way, way back when, like maybe back in like 2013. And Conor McGregor won. He beat Max Holloway back then. But these are two totally different fighters now. And if I had to put my money on somebody to win this fight right here, right now, I would have to go Max Holloway. And I would go by finish, by TKO finish. I'd say probably in the second round, if I had to guess. I think Conor probably survives the first one. And then second round, he comes out and he's gassed. Because that's the thing about Conor McGregor. He gets tired. And he gets tired quick, right? You see him in like some second rounds, early third round. He's winded. He's winded. And it's not the same Conor. So I have Max Holloway dragging him into those deeper waters and stopping him, getting him out of there on International Fight Week. Now, what I don't understand is this. If you're the UFC again, he is Conor McGregor. He is the cash cow of this company. I mean, when you have Conor fight, he brings in all the money. There's a reason why they didn't want Conor McGregor to fight on that UFC White House card. You wanna know why? The reason is because at the UFC White House card, they're not having actual fans there. You can't have a bunch of people at the White House, as you know. So they're not gonna have actual fans there. Where they have to buy tickets and concessions. They're paying for drinks and food and stuff like that, and they're making money off of the live gate. They're not doing that. They can't do that for the White House. So it doesn't make any sense to put Conor on that card, who's such a big star, if you can't make as much money as possible out of him. So no, they're gonna wait until they get to an arena like they normally do, where they can sell tickets and they can sell drinks and popcorn and hot dogs and pizza and whatever else, and make a butt ton of money off of Conor McGregor. But my thing is this, like, he's got 2 fights left on his UFC contract. And the fact that you give him a Max Holloway first and foremost, in his first fight back in 5 years, mind you, again, that seems a little bit like you're setting him up to fail. You're setting him up to fail. And subsequently, what's going to happen is if Max Holloway goes out there and starches Conor McGregor, like just knocks him out, beats him up, and the fight doesn't look competitive, you kill the stock of Conor McGregor then. Now you can no longer market this guy on the same level. Now you can no longer make the same amount of money that you would normally make off of him. So it didn't really compute to me why when he has 2 fights left on his deal, why not give him somebody now that he can beat? Give him somebody that he can beat. I would have loved if he fought Michael Chandler, but for some reason they wanted to feed Michael Chandler to Mauricio Hoofy on the White House card. Because Michael Chandler was a very winnable fight for Conor McGregor. You would have made all the money off of him in that fight if he beats Michael Chandler, let's just say hypothetically speaking. And then for his final fight in the UFC, if you want to give him a fight where he's probably going to get beat, sure. It would make all the sense to do it. It'd be the last fight on his contract. He would get beat, right? He'd be done with the UFC. And you would have gotten everything that you needed out of him. But instead, you're giving him a top heavy schedule, albeit just 2 fights on the schedule. He's probably going to lose to Max Holloway. And then you're not going to be able to market him the same for his final UFC fight. It's backwards to me. It's backwards. What up, Cam? It's backwards to me. Stretch says, I kind of feel like Ultimate Fighter was a tad bit ahead of his time compared to content now. I totally agree. I totally agree. It was a great idea back in the day. And in certain seasons, there were some really good seasons of it. But if they did it the right way nowadays, I just don't know why they've dropped the ball on that. Maybe I should work for the UFC marketing team or something like that, because these ideas just feel like obvious home runs, and they just kind of let the Ultimate Fighter go by the wayside for some reason. I don't get it. I never will, but we'll see. Listen, anyways, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this episode here of the Reigning Fist podcast. Appreciate each and every one of y'all for coming through to this one. This is our first live stream episode outside of a fight companion we did a couple of months ago, but this is our first live stream episode. We're just coming at you, just talking about fight sports in general here. So appreciate all of you guys for coming through. This is the beginning of another show here, yet another show here on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Damn, we're damn near a network now. Excuse me. We're gonna start having to call it PRN, Purple Rain Network, pretty soon here. It's gonna be the Purple Rain Network, not the Purple Rain Podcast. So we got so many shows here coming out of here. Of course, the PRP Main Pod, Quiet Storm, and now the Reigning Fist Podcast. Another beautiful journey is underway. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And hit the like on the way out of here, says the Tila moderator here in the chat. Appreciate you, Tila. Thank you so much for coming through. I know you're not a big MMA fan, but you're here regardless, helping us out as a mod. We love that. We appreciate you. And again, as always, guys, stay positive, test negative. Never, ever forget to call God. We'll catch you guys in the next one.